Chapter 33: The Capability, Complexity Cycle, a unified model of civilizational rise, decline, collapse, and renewal. Every civilization follows the same arc. The symbols change. The religions differ. The technologies evolve. But beneath every empire, republic, dynasty, and industrial order, the same mechanical relationship governs success and failure. Civilizations rise when capability exceeds complexity. They stagnate when capability plateaus. They decline when complexity outpaces capability. They collapse when feedback loops fail. They renew only when complexity is forcibly reset to match what capability remains. This relationship is the organizing principle behind the entire book. Everything explored so far, demographic collapse, institutional overload, elite overproduction, bureaucratic sclerosis, coordination failure, information decay, incentive distortion, and collapse dynamics, are not separate phenomena. They are expressions of a single underlying mechanism. This mechanism is the capability, complexity cycle. Civilizations begin in surplus. A shock occurs, agriculture improves, trade opens, resources are discovered, territory is unified, or technology advances. Surplus allows specialization. Specialization increases capability density. Craftsmen appear. Administrators emerge. Soldiers professionalize. Scholars form. Institutions are born because the population can now support non-subsistence roles. At this stage, complexity is low. Institutions are simple. Norms are cohesive. Trust is high. Elites are small and disciplined. Fertility is high. Families are large. Capability grows faster than complexity. This asymmetry is what makes ascent possible. As capability thickens, societies enter expansion. Institutions formalize. Infrastructure multiplies. Law becomes structured. Education deepens. Trade networks widen. Military power grows. Science, art, and engineering flourish. Civilizations build their monuments in this phase: roads, aqueducts, universities, cathedrals, imperial administrations, scientific academies. Complexity rises rapidly, but capability still outruns it. The system remains elastic. Innovation is high. Social mobility remains possible. Cohesion is strong. Elites grow but remain effective. The civilization feels unstoppable. But expansion carries a hidden cost. Complexity compounds automatically. Every institution generates new sub-institutions. Every law produces precedent. Every infrastructure system requires maintenance. Every specialized role produces coordination burden. Complexity begins rising faster than capability. This is where stagnation begins. Population peaks. Fertility starts falling. Housing costs rise. Social mobility declines. Innovation slows. Elite ranks swell. Credentials inflate. Administrative load increases. Surplus extraction intensifies. Capability growth stalls. Institutions still function, but their slack disappears. Everything requires procedure. Coordination slows. Meritocracy erodes into credentialism. The system becomes rigid. It still works, but only just. Stagnation feels stable because decline has not yet become visible. Stagnation turns into decline when capability density drops below what rising complexity requires. This is where all the failure modes explored emerge. Bureaucracies bloat to compensate for declining competence. Institutions hollow out. Craftsmanship erodes. Delays grow. Demographic inversion accelerates. Debt rises. Political polarization intensifies. Trust collapses. Elites overproduce. Coordination breaks. Administrative systems thicken. Quality deteriorates. The system enters the capability, complexity trap. Every solution requires more capability than the system still possesses. Simplification threatens entrenched elites. Reducing complexity is politically impossible. Rebuilding capability takes decades the system no longer has. Declining fertility ensures capability will shrink further. Decline becomes slow, paralyzing, and irreversible from inside the system. Reform is technically possible but politically impossible. The civilization drifts. Collapse does not begin when conditions worsen. It begins when feedback loops fail. Institutions stop responding. Coordination breaks. Legitimacy dissolves. Administrative systems cease to function. Citizens improvise order. Parallel systems emerge. Local actors replace central authority. Collapse does not mean population loss or territorial disappearance. It means complexity failure. The civilization falls back to a simpler equilibrium that its remaining capability can sustain. Collapse feels sudden only because decline was slow. Once capability falls below the minimum viable threshold, the system can no longer self-correct. It snaps into discontinuity. Fragmentation follows. States decompose into regions, cities, corporations, factions, or informal authorities. Order becomes local. Then comes reset, if it comes at all. Reset is not restoration. It is rebirth on a smaller foundation. Complexity must shrink. Knowledge must be preserved. Craftsmanship must be rebuilt. Local stability nodes must form. New elites must emerge from competence, not inheritance. Institutions must be pruned. Culture must recohere around discipline, continuity, and skill. A civilization cannot renew itself at its former scale. It must first become small enough to function again. Only then can it grow. The governing rule. The entire cycle is governed by a single law. Capability must exceed complexity. When it does, civilizations rise. When it matches complexity, they stabilize. When complexity exceeds capability, they decline. When capability falls below viability, they collapse. When complexity contracts to match capability, they reset. Capability includes human capital, demographic structure, institutional competence, craftsmanship and tacit knowledge, cultural discipline, innovation capacity, governance quality, trust and cohesion. Complexity includes bureaucracy, legal load, infrastructure systems, supply chains, technological dependence, administrative scope, coordination demands, social organization. The relationship is mathematical. Capability rising faster than complexity produces ascent. Capability plateauing while complexity rises produces stagnation. Capability falling while complexity persists produces decline. Capability collapsing below viability produces systemic failure. Complexity contracting to match capability produces reset. This mechanism is universal because it is structural. It is not moral, not ideological, not cultural. It applies to Rome, the Han, the Ottomans, the Soviets, and modern industrial states alike. Applied to the modern world. Advanced societies now exhibit identical late-stage markers. Fertility collapse. Demographic inversion. Shrinking capability density. Expanding bureaucratic load. Elite overproduction. Institutional fragmentation. Declining trust. Political polarization. Stagnating productivity. Craft deterioration. Rising public debt. Educational decay. Incentive distortion. Collapse of long-term planning. These are not political failures. They are thermodynamic symptoms of capability, complexity overload. Most developed nations are already in late stagnation or early decline. Some are entering demographic collapse. None are structurally exempt. The societies that survive the next century will not be the richest or most powerful. They will be the ones that simplify early, rebuild capability patiently, preserve knowledge intentionally, maintain cultural coherence, and resist elite inflation. Those that refuse will complete the cycle. Why this model matters? The capability, complexity cycle allows civilizations to be analyzed structurally rather than emotionally. It replaces ideology with mechanics, narrative with thermodynamics, blame with structure. It explains Rome. It explains dynastic China. It explains the Ottomans. It explains the Soviets. It explains modern stagnation. The timeline changes. The mechanism does not. Every civilization follows the same logic because the constraints are universal: cognition, coordination, demography, surplus, institutions, incentives, and information flow. Understanding the cycle does not guarantee escape. But ignorance guarantees repetition. In the final chapter, we distill everything into the governing principles that determine whether societies survive decline or disappear entirely, the laws of civilisational survival.